Mindset, tactics, skill, and equipment is the priorities of survival. Really, it's a paradigm for how to think about the world and how to think about life. It's not just a paradigm for how to think about like tactical things. So you can have the mindset, you can have the tactics, you can have the skill and the equipment of anything, right? So you can have the equipment of basketball is going to be like shoes and a court and shorts and a basket and a net. Like all of that stuff is equipment. But the equipment, I think we would all agree, if someone's a really good basketball player, it doesn't matter that much. And so then the next part of that is skill, right? So skill is like the ability to actually to dribble the ball well, or to shoot the ball well, or to do the individual subcomponent skills, which is great. But if you're playing as a team and the other team has tactics and your team doesn't, and in the context of sport, tactics are like plays. So like setting screens and running an organized play in order to manipulate the situation to your advantage in order to win. So if two teams go out on the court, or football or whatever sport, two teams go out there and one of them has tactics and a strategy to implement those tactics, and the other one might have superior equipment and superior skill, but the one who is working together as a team and implementing the tactics is most likely going to win. The disparity in skill has to be significant before the skill is going to overcome tactics. And really all of those things are intertwined as well, right? So, I mean, you can't really truly divorce any of those things. But then also, on the highest level, the most important thing, if you don't have the right mindset about how to approach the whole thing, you can have the best equipment, the best skill, and the best tactics, and you won't be able to execute them because your perspective on what you're doing isn't right. And so really I think that applies to anything. So I just talked about it in the context of sports. You could talk about that in the context of woodworking, right? So in woodworking, you have equipment. Obviously, better equipment is great, but better equipment doesn't replace skill, right? The ability to use the equipment is also really important. You can have really nice tools, but if you have this really nice chisel, but you don't know how to chisel correctly, it's not that helpful. But then there's also tactics of woodworking, of like trying to think about like you might be able to joint things really well, or you might be able to do some other task really well, but if you do them all out of order, the overall assembly of whatever you're trying to make doesn't really work out, right? So you got to have the right tactics deployed with the skill and the equipment. And then you have to have the mindset of like hard work and perseverance and all of the things that go into play to make the tactics, the skill, and the equipment of woodworking all play out, right? So again, it's a hierarchy. You can't have one without the others. But most people want to focus on, like, there's tons of YouTube videos out there talking about, tools and skill stuff. There's not a lot of videos that talk about mindset and tactics as it comes to building furniture or something, right? But those are things that are developed over time by people who are master craftsmen at their task. And again, like this whole thing started with in the tactical world. So there's equipment, holsters, guns, lights, belts, clothing, pepper spray, whatever it is, optics, night vision, whatever it is, those are all equipment. And then there's the raw skill to deploy that, right? So the ability to, draw and shoot from concealment in a given amount of time, right? The actual skill and execution. That's one thing. And then tactics is going to be your ability to manipulate the environment. So do you use distance? And do you use it to your advantage? Do you use cover? And do you use that to your advantage? Concealment. Do you use movement, right? How are you, like, you have the ability to shoot on the move. So how do you use movement to affect your adversary? And I think tactics is not divorced from equipment and skill, but it is more important than equipment and skill in the hierarchy. And then finally is the mindset. So the perspective you have that you bring to these situations. So like how much mental preparation have you put into thinking through scenarios? What is your will and desire to survive? Like, what is your belief system about using force against other people, and under what conditions you're willing to use force? So thinking through those things and having the right mindset to apply those tactics and those skills and those equipment is really important. And specifically when it comes to equipment, is and the reason why we use mindset, tactics, skill, and equipment is because the equipment should be driven by your mindset, tactics, and skills, not the other way around. There's all kinds of people who make equipment that doesn't support like high performance conventional tactics and skills. So you shouldn't use that equipment. And in essence, it's good equipment if it's not interfering with your ability to execute your tactics and skills. It's almost like the fact that you didn't have to think about your equipment at all meant that it's good stuff and it's set up right. If you're forced to think and interact with your equipment while you're trying to execute tactics and skills, that means your equipment sucks and you should replace it and get something that doesn't interfere with that and doesn't get in the way with the execution of those things. So equipment, and again, if you look at, what do we spend the most time talking about? We spend the most time talking about equipment. And people who are hobbyists that are just in it for the novelty, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I don't mean that as a pejorative statement, but people who are hobbyists are primarily focused on equipment and they're not focused on skills and tactics and mindset. There's another, I think, more sophisticated level of hobbyist that is interested in skills, but then to then take it to the tactics and mindset level is a whole nother place. That is, I think, beyond the hobbyist and is the professional user. And that professional user isn't just, it could be the private citizen, but they think about it in a professional way, right? They think about the discipline of interpersonal conflict and violent confrontations in a very professional and sophisticated way. And those people are all going to be very particular about the type of equipment they use because they want it to complement their mindset, tactics, and skills. And so when you're deciding if you want to buy something from somebody, if that person's tactics and skills suck, the equipment they make probably sucks too. And that is one of the challenges, right? I mean, generally speaking, the better equipment out there, regardless whether it's pants or whether it's night vision or whatever it is, like the people who are doing stuff at the highest level, who have input in the design of that, generally those products are going to be better. They're going to be mission specific for the group that had design input, but generally they're going to be a higher performing product. And that's why mindset, tactics, skill, and equipment is the tagline under Tenicor. And that's like, I believe that. And I think about that paradigm, not just with regard to the stuff we do, but really all of life, because it's a very useful way to break things down and think about what's important, right? Like if it's woodworking, you want to get caught up in the equipment of woodworking, except for that's not really helpful. You should get caught up in the tactics and skill of woodworking, and that will make you a better woodworker, or whatever it is, soccer playing or whatever it is. And so, it's kind of how I think about things with Tenicor and how I think about things with other stuff as well.